Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our justice system, our legal system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we are truly fortunate to have an attorney with us who is well known not only throughout the town of Colonie, but also throughout the entire capital region. And please join me to welcome Attorney David Marinucci. David, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning, Judge. You caught me on a morning when there wasn't much going on. So
well, and I don't think there's many mornings that there's not much going on in the life of David Marinucci. Of course, David, you've been practicing law now 34 years, primarily in the town and village of Colonie, which has brought your private practice throughout upstate New York. But also very curiously for all of our viewers here, especially in the village, you're no stranger to the village of Colonie, having served as village attorney since 1979. And how did you get involved working with the village of Colonie?
Actually, Judge, I served on the parish council at St. Clair's Church, which, as everybody knows, is on Central Avenue in Colonie. And the present mayor in the village, who is Frank Leak, he was on the parish council with me, and he had mentioned one time that, well, David, you know, we got a slate of candidates and we're running for mayor and trustee in the village of Colonie, and help us out. And if we win, who knows, you may end up becoming the village attorney. And really nobody gave them much of a chance. Much to my surprise, they won. And lo and behold, I was appointed village of Colonie attorney. And the folks there have been around since then. So luckily for them, their longevity has made a success for me.
Well, they've obviously enjoyed good counsel along the way. Having a very intensive background in municipal law is a very important feature and part of your background and experience. First, starting, you're a graduate of Albany Law School, class of 75, is that right?
Yes, Your Honor, that dates me somewhat, but yes, that's true.
Well, don't worry. I'm not. I'm right behind you as an Albany Law School graduate, and of course, before that, you attended Union College, didn't you?
Yes, Judge. Those are my. I tease my friends. Those are my years of success. It's been a bit of a downhill slide since then, but we're doing the best we can.
Well, the law school, of course, and the college have been very much provided a sense of community pride for all of us for many years. Going back centuries now. I think Union College is certainly 17-something. Is that about right?
1795.
1795, and of course our law school, I believe, is the fourth oldest in the nation. My grandfather graduated in 1910, so we have a long line with the Union University, and obviously they're so proud to call you one of their own, as well as we are here in the town of Colonie. So you graduated from Albany Law School, and how did you get involved in your current practice of law?
Actually, I went to work for a solar practitioner. Thankfully, he's still around, Sal Rico, who currently hangs his shingle at Arnold Proskin's office.
Sure.
He worked downtown at the legislature and needed somebody to kind of run the office in Colonie. So I went to work with Sal in 1975. And since he worked for the most part downtown at the legislature, I was pretty much up there on my own, and you kind of learn to sink or swim on your own. So we did.
And David, you continue to essentially serve as a solo practitioner, even through today.
Yes, Judge. What happens is it becomes the only life you know, and you reach a certain point where, as you get older, it's hard to go work with other people because you just haven't done that. Frankly, nobody wants to pay anything if you do that, so that's another reason why you don't try and do that. but it has its pluses and it has its minuses.
Well, I understand that too, and just collectively that you and I both practice in that way. And I had a guest recently, Attorney Robert Kahn, and he also practices in that way too. Do you see in the evolution of the practice of law as we move forward that there will remain a niche for the solo practitioner?
Well, it's harder and harder to maintain yourself as a solo practitioner. The overhead costs are difficult, and because things change so quickly from year to year, it's hard really you can't know everything about everything. And I think maybe 40 years ago, I think it was a lot easier for a lawyer to kind of feel comfortable in dealing with a variety of issues. And I think now, again, because things change so quickly, it's really harder to have somebody come in and just say, well, yeah, I know exactly what to do for this or what to do for that. So I think it's on the wane. I think there'll always be a market for it. But what I've done and what I think has happened to the solo practitioners that I know is that they tend to find their niche and they tend to gravitate toward a certain field or a few fields, and they kind of focus on that. So while you're a GP and you have your shingle hanging out in the suburbs, you really have your niche with a couple different things that you feel comfortable doing.
Well, you've certainly accomplished a tremendous amount in the practice of criminal law over the years as well, and I know that not only in Albany County but also in Rensselaer County, you have defended clients who have actually enjoyed an acquittal of charges pending against them. And that obviously goes to a variety of factors, including your in-depth representation of their rights pursuant to state and federal law. So obviously that continues. And I know that you practice in a variety of courts, daytime and nighttime as well. And do you find yourself across the countryside on any given day or night on behalf of your clients?
Absolutely. I can be in Albany Police Court in the morning. I can be in Scroon Lake at 2 o'clock. I can manage to swing by Rotterdam, zip around to New Scotland, maybe catch Gildan on the way back. You know, it's funny, each week you kind of try to figure out what route you're going to take because you know you're going to be late someplace. So you have to decide where you're most welcome and where you can get in the least amount of trouble. So you kind of zip around and figure out where you're going to end up last. But yeah, every week it's a hustle though. It is a hustle. You're always moving around from one place to another. But then what happens is you complain about that. But then if there's a day, it's rare when you're in your office, which we all need to do because you have to catch up on the piles of paperwork. If I'm in the office for like the whole day, after a couple hours, I start to get jumpy because I know I got no place to go, and I feel like I'm stuck there. So I almost feel like I wish I had a reason like to leave. Right. You know what I mean? Because you're so used to being on that hustle. But it's fun. You meet, because I go north, south, east, or west. I could be 100 miles from here, and it's still manage to get back here to do something else. You do meet a variety of people. You know, I go to so many places. It's comfortable for me because when people call me, the odds of me having been someplace are pretty good. And you can kind of size up what's going on. You know the court staff, and you know the judges, and you know what they'll go for, you know what they won't go for. And I think that gives people some level of comfort in kind of knowing you have that particular niche.
Well, you know, David, your involvement in the village of Colonie is of significant interest to our viewers as well. As our viewers recognize, the town of Colonie includes 2 villages within its boundaries, the village of Menands and the village of Colonie. And they're somewhat structured differently in some ways. For instance, the village of Menands enjoys its own police department and court system, and the village of Colonie is elected not to pursue those departments, but certainly a variety of other departments they do maintain, and a variety of boards and commissions as well. The village of Colonie, founded 1930 or so, is that
Correct.
about right?
Yes,
Incorporated then?
Yes. And
what do you see today? And well, you've been there since '79, providing legal counsel. Have you seen the dynamic of the village change in any discernible way over time?
Well, I have, Judge. In the late 70s, early 80s, the village had a lot of still open spaces and room for more residential development, room for more commercial development. So over those past years, we've been kind of busy with those kinds of things, and the village, you could say, was expanding at that point in time. People were coming in, the village was growing. And now what's happened after 30-something years is that the village really doesn't have any open land anymore. There's really no way for, in a sense, the village to grow. You know, residentially, we've seen there aren't going to be any big residential housing projects coming in. Most of the commercial space is taken. So what's happening is the village is actually becoming a city because we really have no room to grow. There's nowhere else to go. And I think the challenge for the future folks that are governing the village is really how to deal with the village when it can no longer expand. We've kind of done our duty, but like I said, it's going to be much more difficult to sustain those kinds of things that we've been able to do.
How do you see, and very few attorneys in the state of New York have the longevity as a village attorney for this amount of time. How do you see the evolution of the village or villages in the state of New York as they move forward? Routinely, we hear someone speak to, even at a state level, about consolidation. And there were efforts, I remember in the early 90s, Tom Whalen, after he had served as mayor, I believe, of the city of Albany, was also asked to chair a commission on trying to consolidate either municipalities or services throughout the general area. And I remember going to a variety of meetings and hearings on this subject, and there was significant testimony on both sides of the issue about whether certain municipalities should be folded into others. And I just wondered how you saw the future of villages in the state of New York.
Well, I do remember, I think there was an election recently with a local village, whether it would be dissolved or not, and I think the residents voted to keep the village intact.
That's right.
And I think consolidation, it sounds good, and it's a good thing to jump on, but I think the bottom line is that people like to maintain their own identity, and they want their own people that live right in their community being their elected officials. So they talk about it, but I just don't think it's something that's really gonna take hold and gonna happen in a widespread fashion. I can't imagine people wanting to, in a sense, vote themselves out of office and doing themselves in as far as doing themselves out of a job. I just think the system, it's been ingrained for so long. I think it's just going to continue to perpetuate itself. So you may find an idle village maybe in the middle of no place with a population of 100 people. I think a situation like that, it probably makes sense to consolidate that. But I think anywhere, and again, my understanding is that there are some villages in Long Island that have millions of people. I mean, I just can't imagine a village like that, consolidating with somebody else. I just don't think long term it sounds good. I don't think it's ever really going to happen.
Well, I do hear talk about this even in the court system. And there are ideas about consolidating or folding a variety of courts into larger courts. As you know, there's about 1,000 justice courts in the state of New York, and as a result, there are times when the notion by some is the smaller courts should be folded into bigger ones. And while we've recognized that the village of Manans, which is wholly within the town of Colonie, does maintain its own court system, the village elected not to do that and not to have its own court system as well. And actually, in this spirit of consolidation, it might have been you might have been way ahead of the notion about not having your own court system and relying on the town court system and the town police department as well, and not maintaining your own police force as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see the consolidation has great value in shared services. So it leaves the defining the communities as one, but they enjoy the consolidation of services, which could actually save money, but they're allowed to maintain their own integrity the way they want to. Is that how you see it?
It is, Judge, and in fact, the village of Colonie and the town of Colonie for a long time have tried where they could to kind of share some services, sharing some kinds of equipment. In fact, I believe the town recently had approached the village about a shared use of the village's salt silo, which would save the town a lot of time in having to truck the salt, I think, from their main facility, which is many miles away from where the village is, and they got to get to the other side of the village. And I mean, those kinds of things are much easier to accomplish because, again, you still maintain your own identity. And again, I think that's what people like. I do know that you can actually, villages can do away with their assessment boards, and they can adopt the town's assessments, and they can get out of the assessment business altogether. But it's a question of control, and it's a question of being able to satisfy your residents. So I think that most people, on balance, even if it costs a few dollars more to have your own particular village or whatever it may be, I think most people are willing to pay the extra few dollars just to have that sense that they have somebody close to them that they can go to if they have a problem.
It's certainly the notion that the best government is local government, and because often people feel that that's where they are personally connected. I have found, as serving previously as our Town of Colonie zoning board attorney for 13 years,
Sure.
that was often the face of town government. People would come out concerned about an issue that was in their neighborhood, and they would see town government through a zoning board proceeding,
Right.
and maybe no other action face to face with government at all. And I know that the village maintains an active planning and zoning department as well.
Correct. Yes.
And oftentimes that's the interface between local government and the citizens.
That's right, because at the board meetings, people are happy. There's nobody there, and we like that. We like that.
Right, and then we have the zoning board meeting, and certainly there can be well attended.
Tons of people. Correct.
Yeah, well, that's
Correct.
right, and that's all good. And it's all good that everybody has an opportunity to weigh in on issues that affect them in their daily life, a quality of life issue. So we look forward to your continuing involvement there. And have you seen the issues, the legal issues involving municipalities change? Has the state legislature taken action over your tenure to make it more complicated to advise a village, or to make it harder for villages to function in any particular way?
I think they're just more form. It's really paper. Instead of, they always want to try to make things simpler and do away with forms, do away with paperwork. I think what's happened is it's just more forms, more paperwork, more stuff to send out to different people before you can go ahead and do something. So in that respect, it's all paper.
Well, it's much like the practice of law for you and I. When my first closing that I did years and years ago, there were only 3 or 4 forms involved with a real estate closing. And now, every year, there's a new form. And of course, the federal government has gotten into its own set of forms. The bank has its own set of forms. The state has its own set of forms. And you go to a closing now and you advise your client, just be ready to sign 8,000 documents.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Kills a lot of trees, as they say.
And there's a lot. There's many more forms. It's gotten much more complicated. And as you said, under the notion that it's better. But we'll see. There's, oftentimes, the legislative bodies will do all the wrong things for the right reason.
Well, sometimes you become detached from really what's going on at the grassroots level, and you're right. I think the intentions are always good, but sometimes, practically speaking, it isn't always a change that's for the better.
David, you've been practicing now 34 years here in certainly in the town and village of Colonie and in the capital region. Have you seen the nature of the practice change?
Well, I think it's much more difficult, only because, again, things change so quickly. It's really hard to keep your hand on every single thing that's going on. I mean, you do the best you can with it, but it's tough out there. The economy is difficult, and maybe some folks don't think it affects lawyers, but it can. It doesn't really affect the personal injury people too much. If they settle a case, the insurance company pays. The economy really has nothing to do with that. But for most of what I do, criminal V&T stuff, people have to pay for that. They don't have insurance for that kind of thing. And it's tough for, I deal mainly with middle-class Colonie people you know, and you have to deal with the issues that they have, and it's hard for people that have to pay out of their pocket. It's becoming harder for them to do that. Consequently, what happens is I think the public defender's office becomes more and more busy. When the economy's bad, they get busier. The 18B panel attorneys that get assigned, they're busier because there are fewer and fewer people that can actually afford to pay private people. So it does impact on people like myself.
Well, and you and I spoke previously about the way practice has changed here in Albany County over the years, and many attorneys refer back to the special term where all attorneys would be meeting at the county courthouse on Thursdays and Fridays if you were involved in a town or state matter and a governmental matter on these Article 78s, et cetera, and we would all have to personally appear, and hundreds of attorneys could gather in the courthouse on a certain morning, and oftentimes many attorneys look back fondly to that opportunity so that the bar could continue with in collegiality and fostering the notion of working together to close out cases, and those opportunities are now gone. Well, what say you about that?
I think what's happened is, at least for me, is that the justice court system has, in a sense, taken over for that, because what happens is I call it the justice court trade, and you tend to run into the same group of attorneys in certain kinds of courts. So that's your chance to maybe socialize a bit and find out how things are going and how people's kids are and who got divorced and that type of thing. So it still exists. It's just in a different location.
And of course, the Colonie Courthouse, being one of the busiest courts in the state of New York on any given day, will certainly provide that opportunity for interaction between counsels. It's a very interesting observation.
Absolutely, it does. If there are 20 attorneys there, chances are I'll know all 20. And
right.
I like to think that they will all know me, but that's exactly right. Which is why, in a sense, it can be, you're working, but there's a part of it that can be fun, because if I know I'm going to such and such a place, I can say, gee, I haven't been out there in a while. I might run into attorney so-and-so, and invariably, I will. So you can actually look forward to it. It's not all bad. It's not all work. You can still have some fun with it.
Well, and of course that we do, and I know our viewers can tell that you do enjoy the practice of law because it includes people, and that's what it's really about, and trying to facilitate issues that confront a variety of residents and people that come to your office. I just wanted you to know that you've spent a lot of time practicing on criminal law. You've told us, and at the end of 2010, the Colonie Courthouse, the criminal docket, just the criminal docket, you know that we have a variety of types of cases that we do there,
Absolutely.
Not just criminal cases, but we've now moved to the 22nd busiest criminal docket of all courts in the state of New York. Now, considering the more than 1,000 courts in the state of New York, that's a pretty big deal. I'll give you an idea of what's happening over here. And we'll do 25,000 cases a year, but to be at that level, and still in this part-time format, essentially, is as a big city court, which you are a routine practitioner in, gives our viewers an idea of the type of volume that's going on and passing through this Colonie Courthouse.
All they have to do is show up on a Monday or Wednesday night, and the place will be packed, sometimes standing room only.
Yeah.
You come in on Tuesday mornings, on your
Right.
traffic mornings, you can have, I know, hundreds of cases there, which, to be honest, Judge, that's why I tend to show up at your court last on Tuesday mornings, because I know you'll still be there.
Yes,
so
I will be there.
I tend to hit some other spots first before I get there, and even your Thursday morning, your civil calendar, that might be the only, in a sense, bit of a break that the court gets. But otherwise, practitioners, we've noticed over the years the place has just become busier and busier and busier, and you really have to allow for that. I mean, sometimes. Well, I won't name any names, but you can get frustrated sometimes. But it's no longer a court. You can't walk in and walk out anymore. I mean, those days are just gone, and you have to, know that going in, and you just have to make your peace with it. That's what it is. Things have changed. Those days of the walk-in, walk-out courts are gone for good.
Do you think that cases have gotten more complicated, or just the volume has increased, or a little of both, or?
I think it's both. I think a lot of it depends on, like I said, you are definitely busy, But some of the reason why cases take longer is every county, every district attorney's office has different policies, and I go, like I said, I go every place, and there are certain places where it may be easier to resolve files and easier to move cases along than perhaps in other jurisdictions, and of course that can add to backlogs in certain courts. I hate to say in the old days, but 20 years ago, it seemed like it was easier to resolve a case and move on to the next thing. It just things seem to move along more quickly. Now, and again, I go all over the place for whatever reason you want to give to it. It just seems like it takes longer to get files resolved. So consequently, it makes the court busier, because if you can't move this stuff out, you adjourn it and you come back. So consequently, the busyness, it stays the same, because you can't move your files along, and then you get new ones. So the court, you have to end up dealing with the new ones, and then you still have the backlog of the older ones, and there's really not much control the court has over something like that. So we all have to deal with it.
Well, you're not kidding, and of course, as the court, I remind everybody that I'm not allowed to control the gate. The cases are brought to me from a variety of no less than 3 police agencies: the state police, sheriff's department, the town of Colonie, and I'm finding that it's not unusual for a state department like the Department of Labor to bring charges and file them in the Colonie court. Right. And my view of it, of course, is how the justice of the peace position, as framed in our New York State Constitution, based on the Old English system, how it's evolved to be able to actually be the people's court and to touch on not just simple violations or alleged violations of law, but involved in labor law allegations, criminal allegations, landlord-tenant proceedings, and you can imagine the town of Colonie, with all of the commercial space that we have and all of the residential space, we have a very full docket just on landlord-tenant matters. And was that contemplated in the 1700s when our forefathers put this justice of the peace position into the state constitution? I think it's grown up dramatically, and it's called on to do so much more than maybe initially contemplated some hundreds of years ago.
Absolutely, but again, you don't, in the interest of consolidation, though, you don't, as I think the court had alluded to, that's the court that's closest to the average citizen. So do you want to turn everything over to a big government, big operation type of thing? I mean, for me, I don't mind going to the, village of Hoosick Falls or the town of Schaghticoke or the town of Colonie or town of, I don't mind. And I think people in the community like to know that they have, they elect their judges and they have their court. I do think there's something to be said for that. Well, and I'm not saying that there's not without some expense that involved in it, but you can't have everything in life boiled down to dollars and cents. They can't motivate every single thing. I like to say that sometimes it's worth it to pay the price. Right. So I think in the court system, I think they really have to be careful about that. I know the Judge K, which is kind of a bit out of my league, but they talk about a user-friendly court. Well, I think a user-friendly court is a court that's the closest to the people that use it. Right. I don't know how user-friendly a big court can be. I mean, they're just too far removed. Right.
And there's no question that our experiences together in being in a variety of town and village courts certainly suggest that your feelings have a great foundation. David, it's not all the practice of law every day, all day, and the life is much more varied than just that as well. Do you find yourself pursuing any particular hobby or special interest that you've enjoyed over the years to enjoy as well?
Well, this would, of course, not be news to some of my fellow attorneys, so I get a chance to visit without our own, nighttime special terms, but. Everybody has to have something, as you alluded to keep them from going totally insane. Because some days there are some files where you either want to shoot your client or shoot yourself. You're not sure which one. Never the judge, though. You never want to shoot the judge. Never. That. But I do play the guitar. I play mainly the Beatles tunes. I play with a band every now and then. The joke is that if they can't get a good band and they can't find somebody to fill in, they'll call somebody that I know, and we have to hurry up and practice and get some songs together, and we'll do that. But I do have a lot of fun doing that. I keep a guitar at the office. If some things are particularly stressful, I'll shut the door and get the guitar out and play a couple tunes. And in fact, they used to have the Fab Four at 4 on the radio. So if I was in my office at 4 o'clock, which I would be unless I was heading to some court somewhere, they would play 4 songs, and I would get out the guitar and I'd play the 4 songs along with the radio, make sure I was doing it right, make sure it sounded good, and those 4, it kind of, it kind of gets you through. You have to have some fun to kind of compensate for some of the bad.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and I know before, off camera, you told me about one of your favorite songs, John Lennon's "Ticket to Ride," which of course was on the Help album, and part of that a fun movie as well. And I understand that you enjoy playing that.
So my license plate says "Ticket to Ride."
Well, we've certainly enjoyed our Ticket to Ride with David Marinucci today, and thank you for joining us, David. It's been our pleasure, and I know the citizens of the town have been happy to learn more about you, and we're all lucky to have you here in the town of Colonie.
Absolutely. No, it's really, I knew you'd make it fun. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's good. Nice to be here.
Thank you, David, and I'm Judge Peter Crummey. Thank you for joining me on Benchmark.